Scott Jennings, a resident conservative panelist on CNN, gave his hot take on Star Wars, specifically on the bad guy, not Darth Vader, but Emperor Palpatine, and made his case as to why the Emperor was maybe not so bad. Maybe he was just a little bit misunderstood.
I think it's time that we took a different look and a new look at the reign of Emperor Palpatine. I think maybe, I mean, you did a podcast on this. I think he's getting a bad rap. And look what he did. He took on an entrenched deep state at the Jedi Council. He tried to bring order to the, he wanted free and fair and reciprocal trade around the galaxy.
Blew up Alderaan.
Protected law and order. Well, I think some could argue that it was warranted given their rebellious activities. I mean, he defended the Empire against unelected hippies and violent protesters. I'm just saying, it's been a while. We may need to take a look at this again and say, was he right?
This is one of the most classic story villains. It's not subtle that he's a bad guy with bad motives who is willing to do really, really bad things to achieve his goals. But while Jennings is obviously trying to make a funny point here, he's still making this comparison in an effort to prove that maybe Trump isn't so bad. I'll just say that he's not off to a great start when the most analogous character he can find in the entire Star Wars saga for Trump is Palpatine. Quelling a rebellion isn't something to celebrate when they're rebelling against authoritarianism and a guy who blew up an entire planet.
But the other guy? He spent 4 years turning us against each other while embracing dictators and tyrants around the world. That's not who we are.
The account posted an AI-generated image of Trump with a red lightsaber. That's the Sith color, to be clear. And the following caption: Happy May the 4th to all, including the radical left lunatics who are fighting so hard to bring Sith lords, murderers, drug lords, dangerous prisoners, and well-known MS-13 gang members back into our galaxy. You're not the rebellion, you're the empire. May the 4th be with you. Oh, Donald.
As I've said before, the left doesn't know a good guy from a bad guy.
But look, who doesn't love a sympathetic villain? The misunderstood villain is a villain worthy of empathy, one even worthy of celebration. If only someone had just taken the time to listen to them, to love them, to really see what they were trying to do, and appreciate that everything they did was actually for the greater good, then maybe things would have been different. It's not an unusual thing to see happening. Wicked and other books by Gregory Maguire arguably started the trend 30 years ago by providing backstory and empathy for characters like the Wicked Witch of the West and Cinderella's evil stepsisters. Disney nearly has made a whole subgenre of films exploring villain origin stories because they can't seem to create any new characters, all of whom are what? Misunderstood, like Maleficent and Cruella. Then there's the Joker, featuring a character who is perhaps especially relatable in these modern times, when the everyday working American is struggling to get by while billionaires sap our cities of their resources. And who didn't feel sympathy for Killmonger when he was killed by the Black Panther? Who didn't resonate with his plight even a little, even if his methods were destructive and abusive? In all of these stories, they attempt to explain away all of the terrible things these villains did by showing that hurt people hurt people. Sure, fine. It still, however, does not justify or forgive the terrible things that these people do. Lots of hurt people don't go around blowing up planets. People with negligent or abusive mothers don't always become fascist dictators or commit genocide. But in some ways, Jennings isn't wrong about the fact that world leaders, or in this case galactic leaders, sometimes have to make very hard decisions and do hard things for the sake of the bigger picture. Things that don't look good in headlines. Things that are not so simple to explain away in a tweet. But this is the job that they signed up for. They knew what it would entail, and they acknowledged within themselves that they possess the ability to follow through on these bad, hard things. And that's why you can't really trust anyone seeking a position like that. And this is why we have art. A good villain, just like a good hero, is complicated and imperfect. Of course, there are sympathetic aspects to a villain. Of course, there are ugly sides to a hero. Of course, the plot is complicated and nuanced. If they weren't, it would be a bad story. Perspective matters quite a bit too. Rent, the Broadway musical, felt very different when I saw it the first time in New York when I was 15 years old compared to when I watched it again years later. Was Benny really that bad? I know he said his friends didn't have to pay rent and then he changed his mind later, which was wrong, but his overall vision wasn't bad at all. He had come into some money and wanted to help out his friends and others like them. You could argue that he was a gentrifier, but that doesn't really come into the plot very much, so it's kind of hard to say. The Great Gatsby, what was he? Good? complicated for sure, but he's a great example of the fact that no one is inherently good or bad, not in real life, not in art. Art is there for you to internalize it and contemplate it and see how you feel about it. There are so many things that stand out to me when I'm watching something that the person sitting next to me didn't catch, and vice versa. And good, it gives us something to talk about later, gives us something to think about later. Art is meant to imitate life or to help us make some kind of sense of it, to confront difficult or uncomfortable things through a more palatable lens or from a distance. Lord of the Rings was inspired, at least in part, by World War I, and while that story in particular has actually been criticized for having somewhat one-note villains and heroes, there are depths to these things. People read those books over and over again, parsing out details each time that they had missed in each earlier reading. But depth is something that is lacking in today's world of tweets and shorts and TikToks and reels. Everyone has a hot take and they drop it as if it's the first time anyone has ever said or even thought this thing. Nothing any of us thinks or feels is original, and frankly, we would know that if we read more books. And every hot take has to be dropped before someone else's, so there's no time for creators to really think about their responses to things. With all of that, along with an algorithm that rewards inflammatory words and behavior, we've created a world where perhaps once divergent and complex ideas become reduced to trendy talking points that chronically online people repeat to their coworkers in everyday conversations so they can come across as edgy. I'm not mad about what Jennings said here. He was trying to be funny and he has certainly said worse things. But because we live in echo chambers these days, where everything is a meme, where ideas are rarely fully explored and developed, where the masses can no longer identify what's real and what isn't, there are already conversations amongst the blue checks on X about why Palpatine wasn't so bad and about why the Jedi probably deserved to be defeated. So edgy, so neoteric, not reactionary at all. And I'm not even concerned about people trying to defend Palpatine as a point of cultural debate. I'm concerned that they're defending him for the express reason that they see Trump in him. Anyway, thank you, Scott Jennings, for this. So glad that I'm not active on X anymore to bear witness to whatever will come from this. All right, that's it for me. If you got anything out of this, please like the video and subscribe to the channel for more. Thanks.